today we'll be discussing the recent rumours around John Ruddy leaving for Luton, and also we'll be discussing Scott Hogan and Lukas Jutkiewicz perhaps leaving the club sometime in the near future. So it was 10 yesterday morning. It was Birmingham Live who were reporting it. Luton Town keen on signing on John Ruddy. How's this come about for you then, Sam? It's been a bit interesting, hasn't it? So it's been very out of the blue.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that our number one keeper is being linked with a move away, literally like just as the championship season started. I mean, it's not ideal, really, is it? I mean, someone of Ruddy's quality as well, and the fact that he is, a really experienced leader in the dressing room. You think like with his age and what he's done at EFL and everything, like he is one of our sort of go-to players for that experience. Because if you look at the players we brought in so far this transfer window, it's a lot of younger players. So I mean, for sort of someone that experienced as Ruddy to be sort of in the dressing room, it's really important. So to let him go, I think would be a big miss.
Yeah, it's a big miss in the fact that we wouldn't have the same replacement for him as well. And we've done
Exactly.
that a lot in recent years, which is quite disappointing to see it even come about, really. I mean, like, obviously, rumours are rumours, but still, when we lost Che Adams in the summer of 2019, never replaced him. We never replaced Jota as well in that same transfer window. All the good players we've had over the recent years, we've never properly replaced them. We had the opportunity of signing Matthias Sarkic as well before he went to Millwall. And if Ruddy does eventually go to Luton, then that's going to be a right kick in the teeth because as much as I like Neil Etheridge, he's not up to the standards that Ruddy's been playing at. And also with Etheridge playing as the first team keeper, who's the backup keeper then?
Yeah.
At the moment it's G-Cock, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a youngster, isn't it? It's someone that, not really showed in the past that he's like up to the quality, as you said. And
Mm.
same with Etheridge, really. And the fact that, again, he is like someone with a bit of EFL experience, having played in the league for a very long time, but doesn't exactly fill me with confidence. I think the first season that he had at the club was all right, actually. But then the second season, it really started to sort of show that, yeah, some of the goals he was letting in that it wasn't fantastic. And yeah, I mean, he was there when Bowyer was there and also with Karanka as well. And yeah, with Eustace, it seems as if, yeah, straight away he brought in Ruddy. I think Ruddy was one of Eustace's first signings, if I'm not mistaken. So
Mm.
someone that he did sort of identify in the way that he wanted to play as well with the three at the back system. It's how Wolves played when they got promoted when Ruddy was in goal.
Mm.
That sort of three at the back system where he seemed to be, comfortable on the ball and communication as well. So I think, yeah, going forward, the system we are going to play is actually going to sort of determine which goalkeeper would be best. But as you said as well with Sarkic, that would have been a good one to get should we sort of know that Ruddy was being linked with a move away.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, Ruddy's a proper interesting person to dive into, really, because like his career is actually much better than I think people remember him for. So he was an
Yeah.
England captain. No, England England captain. He was an England
That is
captain. He
something for the
definitely
Hassan,
wouldn't
but
be
yeah.
with us. Yeah. He played for England. He was in the Euro 2012 squad. He was at Norwich for 7 years. He made 117 Premier League starts. That's their third highest in the club's history in the top flight. He got promoted with Wolves, like you say. He also made the FA Cup semi-final with them as well. They lost to Watford, I think, didn't they? And
Yeah,
Troy Deeney scored the penalty as well to get back into the game to
he
equalise
did.
and take it to
Yeah,
extra time.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting to see like his career path. But yeah, he's made 43 appearances with us as well. And he's been fantastic, really. I think like some of the best standout moments, particularly with last season, was like all the penalty saves, really. So he made one against Rotherham, QPR. There's a few others as well that I can't quite remember, but he's been absolutely solid in goal. He's a great shot stopper.
Definitely.
He's fantastic in the air, which is something that Etheridge really struggled with. I think Etheridge is a great shot stopper. I mean, it makes
Yeah.
it makes for a clear viewing, really. When you see the save he made against Forest Green last season in the cup, it's just
Well,
evidence,
the
isn't it?
triple save, wasn't it? It was like one
Yeah,
save, then another, then another.
he's
It was
that
crazy.
he's that type of keeper, Neil Etheridge. He's like you can just palm them away. He's a really good keeper in that sense. Just aerially, though, he's not very good, is he? And his kicking lets him down sometimes as well. But although I do think that Ruddy's kicking on Saturday wasn't that great actually.
No,
I was
no.
like, don't you start as well. Like we've just gotten the hang of that. Don't need you
Yeah,
getting into that now.
because he had a bit of a clanger last season against Swansea, didn't he? Where he sort of came out to
Mm.
clear the ball and he sliced it, didn't he? I remember that one.
I mean, keepers all have mistakes, don't they? I mean, that one
Exactly,
was
but it's just
fairly
because they're
memorable.
the sort of first, like they're like the last person back who gets scrutinised the most, isn't it? You've got to feel bad for goalkeepers in that respect, where if
Yeah,
they make a
absolutely.
mistake,
Yeah.
then it almost certainly leads to a goal.
So what's the sort of plan for Luton then, signing Ruddy? So They've made 7 signings already this transfer window. They've bought Steve Chong off of us, who is their record signing. But they've also just signed Blackburn's Thomas Kaminski, who obviously last season had a blinder against us away.
He
Um,
did, yeah.
what's the thought process behind it? Is he going to be their backup, or is he going to be their main keeper? What do you think what do you think that's all about?
Well, I mean, you look at sort of Ruddy when he was last in the Premier League with Wolves, he was back up then, wasn't he? And they've signed Kaminski for around £2.5 million from Blackburn, is what I've seen. So the fact they paid more money for Kaminski says to me that he'd probably be the starter. But I think it's good for sort of Luton to have that backup goalkeeper with that experience, if things do go wrong with Kaminski. So I think it's one of them things where he's being brought in as like experienced Ruddy, but I imagine that Kaminski will be the starting goalkeeper for Luton. And I've seen that we're being linked with their goalkeeper for a replacement, aren't we? That Hovar,
Mm,
people are
yeah.
being linked with. Yeah.
What would that be a replacement like?
I don't know too much about him, to be honest. I mean, I know like last season he was quite prevalent for Luton and he started a lot of games for him, but I wouldn't say he's an improvement on Ruddy, put it that way. I mean, I
Mm,
don't know what it's going to be like with the finances and everything if we're going to sort of have to pay a fee for him or whatever. But
mm,
yeah, I think selling Ruddy for 1 million, I think for us, it's one of them people that it's not really about the money, it's for what he sort of gives to the team and the experience that he offers as well. It's not one of the players where you sort of go, oh, yeah, I'll sort of take that money from him, or, he could be sold for more later on or whatever, like with some of our youngsters, like with George Hall and Jordan James, where, sort of you have a cash offer then, but then in the future they'll be worth more. That doesn't really come into effect with Ruddy because of like his age and sort of where he's at in his career and everything.
yeah.
But I'd say the best move for us would be to keep hold of Ruddy and just
Oh,
sort of not get
absolutely, yeah.
involved in sort of any sort of dramas with goalkeepers or taking a gamble with like a lone keeper or whatever. It's
Mm.
just not something I'd be willing to entertain, really.
Yeah, because we've got such a solid keeper in him, and we know what he
Yeah,
can bring to the team, and we know what we can expect from him. If we did replace him with Havarth, or however you properly pronounce his name, um, then we're playing the blind game again, aren't we? We don't know
yeah,
exactly what's coming round. We don't know if he's going to be any good. We sort of know the deal with Ruddy, and we know the deal with Etheridge, and that's why we got John Ruddy in, so we could have a proper replacement for him. Um, but yeah, what would the transfer fee be like, even if he was to go? I mean, if it's like, is it like 1 million or something? Because he's still got a
that's
year
what
left
I
on his
heard.
contract.
Yeah, I heard around £1 million, but as I said, like for me, the fee isn't like the main sort of point as to why we'd sell Ruddy. It's just not really a fee that I'd really entertain and look at and go like, oh yeah, we'll take 1 million for him because I mean, for money, like we are all right nowadays, aren't we? I guess with how
Mm.
much we're spending in this window and the fact we've got around 5 million for Chong and the money we got for Joe Bellingham as well.
Yeah, true. I feel like I think if we were to get a replacement keeper, the only problem is I reckon we try and go even cheaper than that. So if we sold Ruddy for 1 million quid, I reckon we'd go even lower to try and find a keeper for like 750
Yeah,
perhaps,
I
which
agree.
I don't think is a great idea. I think if you're gonna splash out on one good position, I reckon you can try for goalkeeper because it's one of those positions that over time is going to be worth it. You know, keepers they go on forever as well. You know, like Gianluigi
Mm.
Buffon has only just retired. He's like
Yeah,
42 or something like that.
yeah.
So you're going to have a proper keeper there for a good few years. With players like strikers, attackers, midfielders, particularly fast and energetic strikers and midfielders and everything like that, they're going to be in high demand and be moving about all the time. You know, if Sariki Dembele has a good season this season and scores 15 goals for us, he's going to be back in the Premier League. He's going to go for big
Mm.
money. If John Ruddy has, or let's say Gcock has like a standout season after Ruddy leaves and in Neil Etheridge gets injured, I don't know, just hypothetically, and he's like having a blinder, then he won't be in as demand as Sariki Dembele might be. Do you know what I mean? It's just like I feel like
Yeah.
if we're going to splash out on a player, I reckon we can try for a goalkeeper. I'd have quite liked what's the Millwall keeper's name? That's old. Is it Bielakovsky or something? I can't remember his name.
Oh
But the
yeah,
Polish
yeah. We,
keeper.
we were linked with him years ago. I remember like when
Mm.
Harry Redknapp, I think, was in charge. We were linked with him then,
We should
and
have got him at the time.
yeah, I think that window was an interesting one. We were linked with like Bilkowski that season, and I think like Graben as well was a striker we were being linked
Mm.
with, if I can sort of remember properly. And yeah, that's when we were sort of speaking about spending ridiculous amounts of money. But I think yeah,
Mm.
Bilkowski now would be one where we could get him for under £1 million, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk about Duke and Hogan then. So this is a rumor that's probably not been as well documented, but I suppose it's something still to talk about because two strikers who we're probably going to need by the end of the season, aren't we? Because we haven't we haven't got a striker in just yet. We've got Tyler Roberts, but he's not your typical striker, is he?
No.
Um, but let's talk about Duke first and what it would mean if he would leave the club. So he's a club legend. He's pulled us out of many relegation battles over the last few seasons, and he's the hardest working Blues player I've seen in such a long time. What are your thoughts on the big man, Lukas Jutkiewicz?
I mean, yeah, you summed it up pretty well there, Tommy, and the fact that he is a club legend and the amount of sort of crucial goals he scored for us over the years to drag us out of, deep relegation trouble where we've been sort of down there and needing a goal from somewhere, just something. And he's just delivered at the right time. We could list off at least, 6, 7 games where he scored goals that have just dragged us out of these incidents. And it would be really sad to sort of see him go. And I think he's one of them players that deserves like a proper send off. If he was to sort of play his final game, sort of make it known before that he's going to play his final game. And I
Yeah,
just love it to be
precisely.
sort of like at St Andrews with the packed out crowd again, sort of clapping off for what he's done for us, really. And it would be sad to see him go. And I mean, we're speaking about sort of bringing in a striker. I don't want to see us let go of a striker when we need to bring in strikers, if you know what I mean.
Good
We
point.
don't
Yeah.
want to lose people in that position if we're speaking about bringing people in that position, sort of limiting our options before we strengthen them.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody spring to mind? I mean, it's difficult nowadays with the sort of array of strikers and how
Yeah.
changing football is. But is there like a sort of category of striker would you look at?
I mean, it's an interesting one because we've been linked with Tom Cannon. That's like the main one, isn't it? Where
Mm.
a lot of people have said, "Oh yeah, bring this guy in," because a lot of Championship clubs are after him or whatever. He got a lot of goals for Preston last season. He joined them in January, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard about the finances around this deal, and apparently it cost us around £1 million just for this loan deal. And
Right.
I don't know if that's something that I think is like entirely sustainable and something that the Blues board would look at now and go, that's a healthy way to approach business. I just
Yeah.
don't necessarily think that's a deal where, it's great for all parties in terms of like financially and all the other aspects of it. But a striker that I have seen mentioned for Championship clubs that did score goals in the Championship last season is Sorry Cabba from Cardiff, where he's
Okay.
gone back to his club in Denmark, isn't he? And he's being linked with a lot of teams in the Championship, and it's around a £2 million fee apparently that the club want for him. And I think he's 23 years old, so he's still got a lot to give, and that's the ideal replacement. But I just think, yeah, with the finances and the financial fair play, having to sort of balance the books and everything, it's going to be interesting to see how much we can actually spend from now until September.
Mm-hmm. I think that I mean, like £1 million just for a loan deal for Tom Cannon isn't worth it. I mean, I remember Fran Vialba a few years ago. I remember that loan deal was an absolute catastrophe. I can't remember exactly how it went, but I'm pretty sure that I think it was Valencia who we were getting him off
Yeah.
would receive £1 million for the year for just to have him, and then we would sign him the year later for 2.5 million. I'm gonna have to properly remember this. Either way, it was absolutely ludicrous, and he barely played for us. He was a decent player. I mean, like we played some
Mm.
fantastic football under Clotet at times that season, but the
Yeah.
deal that
Yeah.
we struck was awful. I mean, the business we did that whole entire summer was dreadful. I mean, we got rid of Che Adams, we got rid of Gary Monk, we got rid of Jota, we got rid of our captain in Michael Morrison, and we just
Yeah.
didn't replace any of them with it. It was like, fair enough, we got Vialba, who's a decent player, but the deal was a
Mm.
terrible deal. We didn't replace Adams. We had to deal with Jutkiewicz up front, which we've had to ever since. I mean, like that's why we're still talking about him.
Yeah.
We got Hogan at the end of the season, just before the lockdown happened. And at the back, we just had Mark Roberts and Harley Dean, and Mark Roberts had not been a first team player for a good few seasons at that point. So, like,
Mm.
it's
Mm.
nice to see now that the deals we are doing aren't on the same level as Fran Vialba. So it's yeah, I think it will be a bit of a shame if we do go and make that deal with Tom Cannon because it's like after all the good transfers we've been doing, keeping the budgets down, signing some really good players as well. People like Ethan Laird on a permanent, it's absolutely fantastic. Same with Lee Buchanan as well. It would sort of make me feel a little bit uneasy. Be like, okay, right, we've made
Mm.
all this good deals. It's
Maybe a
like
little bit of panic involved in it, and the
let's
fact
not
that we need a
let
striker, and it's like don't want to go back
exactly,
to the
yeah.
old days. Yeah,
Let's
because I
not
mean,
get carried
you see how
away.
much we spent on Cosgrove when we panicked on deadline day. That's
Yeah,
just something that we don't want to see again.
poor deals really are. I mean, that's why I'm so glad that we do have proper people involved now because
Yeah,
the BSHL, they just didn't know what they were doing. They really didn't. So
exactly.
let's talk about Hogan then. What would he because like he's a really on and off player. I mean, like in the past few
Really, yeah,
seasons, in the past 2 seasons, he's got 20 goals between the two of them. So there is clearly a good striker in there. I mean, like it's obvious, really. He came up from the lower leagues. He signed for Villa for I think £15 million when he came from
mm,
Brentford. Um, but ever since, he's just never been quite the same, has he? I think I don't know. I don't know whether it's attitude. I don't know whether it's personal issues he might have. Whether he just doesn't enjoy playing football. I mean, like there are some players out there who just find it just as a bit of a day job sometimes, and it can weigh them down a bit. But I don't know. He can be a really good striker, and then he can be
yeah.
really quite off it. I'm not too sure. What do you take on him?
I mean, yeah, if you were to look at his stats for the last sort of few seasons and the way that he scores goals for us, they very often come in like streaks where he'll go on a really hot streak. So if you just look at the 20 goals that he scored over the last 2 seasons, and if you look at the months that he scored them goals in, I
Mm,
mean, if you look at it from last season, I think November, he was like up there with the top goal scorers, wasn't he?
yeah.
After his hat trick against West Brom, he started the season well, and then he kind of petered off from there. And it's the same with the
Hmm.
season before, where he sort of had a hot streak in front of goal, and then he petered off from there. So it's one of them people where I think if he's to sort of have like a consistent flurry of goals, he's got to continue that on throughout the rest of the season to be considered as our like first striker.
Mm,
And what I would say about sort of this season and looking at the striking department is that the players behind him, the midfielders, we've got a lot of options now for like midfield and the creativity to create them chances for Hogan. So
mm.
I mean, we'll have a lot more creativity in terms of him getting them chances. It's just about whether he can take them or not.
Yeah, and he definitely is that in front of goal as well. He definitely gets chances. I think his off the ball work definitely lets him down. Um, but he's a fantastic player at just getting some poaching goals. He's a great poacher.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, like that the first goal against West Brom last season in his hat trick goal. I think was probably the best example of how Hogan can be implemented in the team, just on the edge of the shoulder of the back line and just sort of fading in and out, just trying to lure the midfield in. And then Bakuna slots him through. He's absolutely clean through, rolls it in 1-0. And then obviously the next two goals are absolutely outstanding. That second
oh
goal
yeah.
is one of the best goals I would have seen had I not been in the toilet actually at the time. But yeah, he can be a great player. That's the thing. I feel like I don't know what lets him down. I think it's a combination of things, isn't it? It's the fact that he's a bit lazy at times. His
Mm,
attitude's not quite right at times, and possibly just because he's a bit unlucky sometimes in front of goal. I mean, like Kaminsky, particularly when we talk about him, when he played for Blackburn last season, was just on fire that game. He did score as well in that
yeah,
game, but still, that he was absolutely immense that game. Just barely anybody could get anything past him. So it was a
exactly.
miracle he did get something. But yeah, I mean,
Because I
like,
think Hogan was playing through injury last season as well, wasn't he? Towards the back end of it, that it didn't become
yeah.
apparent until sort of the season was over that he was actually playing through a bit of a knock. So maybe that sort of impacted his performances.
Perhaps he is a bit of an injury-prone player. He might be, but a bit on and off sometimes.
Mm,
I know that Harley Dean was definitely fighting through an injury under Gary Monk towards the end of that season of the
yeah,
2018-19 season. Um, and that was obvious as well because when the news did come out, it was like, oh yeah, that's why he wasn't able to get out to that shot properly.
exactly.
That's why he wasn't running properly. My dogs are barking now. For fuck's sake, shut up. Um, I mean, they're two very different strikers, aren't they? So, like, would Tom Cannon be a better replacement for Duke or for Scott Hogan if we were to get him?
In terms of like for like, you'd have to say Hogan, wouldn't you? Because of sort of like his stature and the way that he sort of likes to play, as you said, off the shoulder and everything. And Duke's more of your sort of target man, isn't he? Where like Cannon's the one to sort of get in behind. But it's interesting with Hogan, like whether he works better as the sole striker up front or with a partner with him. Because you saw
Mm,
like when he was first brought in, like the Pep Clotet days, as you were saying, he was up front with Jutkiewicz and he started off so well, didn't he, Hogan? Before the
mhm.
COVID break, like he was scoring pretty much every game. And
Yeah,
he had a moment in the season last season where he was playing up front with Deeney, and Deeney would sort of drop deep, get the ball, and then look for Hogan sort of on the shoulder
yeah,
and that's when he sort of was scoring a lot of goals as well. But this season, it looks like we're starting with like a 4-2-3-1 where he'd be the lone striker. In the past, he hasn't necessarily thrived in that position. I mean, I remember when we had Karanka and he was playing as a striker up front, he didn't exactly score the goals then. So it's
mm.
going to be interesting to see whether he can sort of do the business up front by himself or he needs a sort of bigger striker partner with him.
I wonder because me and my brother were talking about this. Is it Johnson Clark Harris who plays for Peterborough?
Yeah, yeah.
Like he would be a great replacement for Jutkiewicz, in my opinion. He's sort of like him anyway. So he's big, he's tall, he's aggressive, he's athletic.
Mm.
I
Someone
reckon
that the
he'd be a
Blues fans I think would get on
perfect.
board with. He's the sort of
Yeah,
player that Birmingham fans would take a liking to. I think.
100%. Yeah, because we love players like that anyway. It's why we love Duke
Yeah,
in the first place. He
exactly.
just and people like Michael Kiftembeld as well. Just like
Yeah,
getting absolutely flying into challenges, taking
yeah,
everybody
exactly.
out. It's exactly what we want, and I feel like yeah, I think that should be looked at a bit more. I know we've made some great signings in Buchanan and Laird and Dembele. Those players that stand out amongst any signings we've made in the past few years. But I reckon we could do with someone like Kiftembeld or another Djukovic, or if we were to get Johnson Clark Harris, I'm absolutely certain that he would be well on board with the fans already. So I
Yeah,
feel like we need a bit of an aggressive player just to spice some things up a bit. I mean, Bielik can be a bit like that at times, can he?
yeah. He's good at both things. I think, like with the ball and also the aggression as well. That's what makes him so good, in my opinion.
Hmm. But yeah, it's interesting to see. I think we'll obviously see if all three of these players do eventually start going. I mean, like, where would Duke and Hogan be interested in going? Was it reported, or is it just still rumors?
I think it's one of the things where they're open for offers, maybe. So when the offers come
Mm.
in, then they can sort of assess where they'd go to. But I could just see it with Hogan though. Like if he was to go to another championship club, he'd just like score goals there. It's one
I
of the
know,
people
it'd
where
be
you let
difficult,
go,
wouldn't
and
it?
it's like, oh, why can't you do that in a blue shirt? You can just see it happen. If we went to like a Rotherham or something, he'd just score goals there, or like a QPR or someone like that. You could just see it happening.
I suppose it is dependent on like setup sometimes, though, isn't it?
Mm,
Because I wonder that with Sariki Dembele this season. Obviously, he's hit the ground running with a debut goal, but if his support around the attacking areas isn't as good as he possibly had at Peterborough, let's say, who outplayed us in the friendly game, that style of football definitely suited him. Fast,
yeah.
get it straight into him, players moving off of him, and he can feed it into them, and they work it round and into the back of the net. So I reckon with players like Hogan, if he was put in that system where he would be like the target man in the middle of the box and everybody did the work into him, then he would get 20 goals a season, 30 goals a
Mm.
season. He's that type of player where you give him options and you give him service, then he'll just bang him in every single time. Um, so yeah, it's interesting to see. I mean, like, what team in the championship perhaps could be like that?
What with the sort of service, like the quick football.
Mhm. Or
Yeah, it's
even
an
just
interesting
the
one.
poacher
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one. You look at sort of the teams that are predicted to finish where we're
Mhm.
looking to sort of finish next season, like the mid-table area, and the teams that are there that are perhaps in like transition. You look at Watford. For one of them, they scored 4 goals against QPR before the half-time break on
Mm,
Saturday, and they look to play like a sort of really quick style of football where it's sort of in the opponent's third, and Valerian Ismail sort of encourages like this physical aggression in the forward areas, but then also that sort of quickness to sort of be clinical and finish
mm,
when you can. Because if you looked at the goals they scored against QPR, they're all sort of similar patterns where they're sort of getting the ball up quickly and then looking to punish and just sort of exploit them gaps. And as you said with Hogan, where he is a poacher and he seems to be in the right place at the right time when you get the ball to him.
mm. I wonder whether you could do like a bit of a Moneyball take on it if you've ever watched that film. You just get someone in who you've got no idea about. He's just like all stats based. But I reckon you
Mm,
could do that with Hogan. Just put him in the box, just leave him there. And then every time you've got a chance in and around the goal, you just feed it to him and he'll score. It's just like
yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
some team would think about doing that. So I do wonder if teams like maybe Leeds or Watford are interested in that. If like you get all the big strong players to do all the hard aggressive work, get Hogan in the middle, and then just feed it into him. And
Yeah,
perhaps that's the same with Duke as well. So, like, if there is a struggling championship side, perhaps like Rotherham this season, who might be in the towards the bottom of the table, then they might need someone like Jutkiewicz, just get him some crosses, stick it in the back of the net, a bit Andy Carroll like, and
mm,
win some games, get some points on the board that keep him up, wouldn't it? So it's interesting because that's what we've been doing these past few seasons. So
yeah. Literally, literally.
if we do sell Duke and Hogan, who we are considering like championship survival type of strikers, then I'm hoping that we're not going to be in the championship relegation battle. That's for sure. But I'm hoping
Yeah,
that we're going to have the
yeah.
strikers who are able to put us up the top of the table and not still scrapping for
Mm.
17th place finish.
I suppose one of the things with us where you don't want to go for the strategy, run before you can walk. It's going to be a
Mm,
gradual thing to get to where we want to get to. And hopefully we don't sort of change too much at once, because if you do that, then that leaves sort of a bit of a risk where, you're asking players to do something that is so different to what we were doing the season before. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't let go of these players yet. I mean, I'd sort of give it a season, see how we go, assess where we are, and then in the next window, perhaps look at these players and go, right, are they good for the direction we want to go in? And is there
mm.
other options that are out there that we can bring in that are going to strengthen those areas before we let these players go, rather than sort of being sort of proactive rather than reactive? Am I saying that right? Or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? Yeah, yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it's interesting talk that was. I don't think there's much else to discuss. I don't think.
I mean, yeah.
Um,
I guess we got the game tomorrow, but yeah, I don't know what much we can say about that. Really, it's one of them ones where a lot of the
yeah,
youngsters will get minutes, sort of assess the team there, and Etheridge will probably be in goal for that. So we'll see how he does in that game.
perhaps. Yeah, I mean, maybe even Gcock. I'm not entirely sure.
Mm.
I kind of hope we win.
Yeah,
I'm not too fussed about the League Cup as much as I probably was when we were making the quarterfinals against Villa back in 2011. But
I suppose
it's
you want like a big team to play against, don't you? Like at
yeah.
St Andrews, sort of when the stadium is back again, it'd be one of them ones where a Tuesday, Wednesday night where you could get like a Premier League team down. I think it'd be a good atmosphere at St
Mm.
Andrews. So in terms of that, it would be good, but I can't see us going as far as them days.
We've been really bad in cup competitions as of late, like, we've hardly made past the second round of the Carling Cup, like the EFL Cup lately.
Mm.
I mean, in the FA Cup as well, we had a decent few games last season against Forest Green, and we've got a replay against Blackburn, but, I think the last proper good game we had was against West Ham away in the, FA Cup,
Yeah, I
and,
was at that game. Yeah,
oh,
yeah. I
were
mean,
you?
you're a million miles away from the pitch, that's for sure. But
Literally, yeah.
yeah, we competed in that game. Like we lost 2-0, didn't we? But
Mm.
there was definitely moments where it could have gone either way. I remember one point where we were through on goal, but it just happened to be Wes Harding that was the guy that was through on goal.
Literally, yes.
It didn't exactly fill me with confidence
Oh,
seeing him get
man.
that far forward. But yeah, we were competitive in that game, and that was a really good season. Besides the sort of points deduction that just sort of threw us into that relegation trouble. And I
I
remember we
know.
lost, I think, every game in March, so that really derailed our
Yeah.
season. But apart from that, I look at that season as a good one.
Literally, yeah. I think that's why I'm kind of hoping to win tomorrow night, just so we can get just somewhere in the cup, honestly. Just
Yeah,
like get a Premier League team out of absolute fluke in the second round or the third round, whatever round we are in. I
yeah,
have
it's
no
good. Get
idea.
him at home. Yeah, I think that'd be a sort of one that a cup run. It does sort of boost the camaraderie and like the sort of morale around the place. So I think it's one of them ones where yeah, if we get a good cup run going, then it could really sort of spark some excitement with the fans and everything. So yeah, I
Mhm.
wouldn't be completely against it, and I'd like to see us sort of put out a semi decent side against Cheltenham, maybe feature some players that were on the bench for the Swansea game, but players that could compete for the first team, like Bakuna and Miyoshi
Mhm.
and Jutkiewicz and like Chang and James. I'd love to see them guys start.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you for joining me, Sam. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe and keep right on.